We're getting pretty close to the end of this course now, guys, so I hope there's been a huge amount of information in here that has been useful for you. I hope you've managed to get a better understanding of how to use Moralis inside of your builds. And the last major topic in this cloud code section will be webhooks. So I've assumed that the majority of the applications that you'll be building will be using some sort of JavaScript framework, maybe React or something else. But you might be coming towards this, you might be coming into Moralis using a different environment, and you might want to be using some different tools. So webhooks will help you get access to your cloud functions from a different environment. You're already familiar now with before save, before delete, and after delete triggers. Webhooks are currently available for those, and of course for cloud functions. To specify a new webhook, you just need to go over to your dashboard and head to the webhook section. That'll be here. And you can create a new webhook. And this would be specifically for functions that are external. So in this example down here, this is a function. We're going to call it Hello World. And the webhook URL is a Heroku app. So it's actually something external that you want to be able to call from within the Moralis SDK. So I've written everything here in vanilla JavaScript, and a lot of our other applications will be in React, but sometimes maybe you've been doing things in a Ruby or a Rails environment or a Python environment or whatever it might be, and you've built some sort of function that you want to be able to get access to using the SDK or using the webhooks here. So this is how you would use this. A webhook request for a cloud function will contain the following parameters: master, user, installation ID if it's available, parameters, and the function name. Webhook servers are produced in something like Express or whatever it may be. Now, you might have a webhook URL from various different methods. You might have built your own server, you might be using Express, you might be using something like Heroku, wherever it might be that you've hosted your application for which you're looking to use as the webhook. You'd need to put that into that webhook URL. Once you've done that, you would call this function exactly the same way as you would a normal cloud function. When the webhook is called, there'll be a JSON object that goes through, and the JSON object would have this information preloaded. And to respond to the webhook, you would be able to send a JSON object with an error or success set, and you will activate your webhook from the dashboard as I've just shown. You can use some triggers with your webhooks as well, such as before save, after save, before delete, and after delete. And these are the parameters that will be sent to the webhook. But you can also define before consume. So before consume webhooks, we've briefly seen before. If we go back to have a look at the smart contract events, we had this before consume trigger here. And the example is when historical data is not synced automatically, a before consume trigger needs to be created on the table name. And really the main reason for this is because when you're looking to get a large amount of data, say for example from a smart contract event, let's say a transfer event that could have millions of events per hour, which would effectively kill your server, you'd need to define a before consume webhook and set the table name used on the plugin creation when you did the sync and watch event. And if it's over a certain value, you could just return true, and that should solve your issue. Of course, if you have any other problems, you could post something into the forum. But that should give you an idea of how you can get started with your webhooks. Okay, and the final section over here will be config. So in the Moralis dashboard, you have a section for config, where if you need to, you can create a parameter. Maybe you want to set some sort of variable in here. Maybe you want to call it something like my secret something. And it's going to be a string, and the value is going to be very original, Chris Bailey. And then you can set whether or not it requires a master key to get access to that, and it's probably a good idea to do so. From here, you can create the parameter, and then it will be saved in here. In your cloud code, you could then use that parameter because it exists. You could use that parameter because it would then be set in your dashboard. You'll have to use the master key in order to retrieve it. So in this case, we could just write a simple cloud function. We'll copy these 2 lines of code inside it, and we will go and call my secret something, and we should get back Chris Bailey. In the cloud code, it would look something like this: Moralis cloud.define. We'll run the test config. We will look for my secret something, and then we will return that private param. Once we save that on the front end, we can then run await moralis.cloud.run or run test config with no parameters, and we should get back, there it is. So that could be another way for you to hide some environment variables that you want only to be accessible from your server. And that brings us to the end of the config section. So huge amounts of information we've gone through, especially with the database and the cloud code, and we can start pulling all of those together now when you're building your applications. And now if you were to, for example, go back through the demo applications and some of these tutorials, a lot of the techniques that are included in there that might have been advanced at the time will now make a lot more sense. The syncing side of things, the cloud code and functions and triggers, using the Web3 API and the SDK, all of these kinds of things will now make sense to you. And if not, go back, revisit the videos from the beginning and watch it all again. But I hope that has helped level you up as a Moralis developer, and we'll finish off with these last few sections as we wrap up the rest of the course.